This is Campus to Canton Live. Austin Ace, Matt Bruning, Chris Moxley, no Felix Sharp, no problem. On today's episode, guys, our favorite players to surprise and or fail here in 2024, second-year breakouts, players and freshmen that we are targeting most in supplemental drafts now that those have kicked off in our Campus to Canton leagues. But we're going to start by rearranging some rankings for College Football 25, a game that is coming out here, we can officially say, this month. It's 20-something days, I think, till it comes out here. We're all excited.
Less than that.
Less than that? Okay. All right. We're all excited. The 20th?
15th early date? No, 15th earliest date. I think if you pre-ordered it, 16th, I'm sorry, and then 19th if you didn't. So not like I know, but I'm pretty sure that's like the
what qualifies as a pre-order? Like if you order it like on the 15th, does that count as a pre-order?
I think no. Actually, I think they so usually yes, but I think if I remember correctly, I saw something on Twitter like if you didn't have it pre-ordered by a certain day, then you actually can't, or you have to you have to get the certain edition. I think they drop like 3 editions, so I think actually it's like the middle edition, not the one that's $150, but the one that's like $90. I don't remember, I did mine a long time ago, but if you get, I think the $90 version, then you can play it, I think as early as the 15th. I know it's the 15th or 16th because I saw something on my PlayStation the other day that I'll be downloading in like 10 days, 11 days. So,
man, I'd be done with like 6 seasons of gameplay, Dynasty gameplay by then, in that extra time.
Someone I know that like may not be Austin or Chris took off time from work just to be able to play this game. So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Well, there you go.
A couple seasons. Ohio State's gonna win like 4 back-to-back national championships.
Ew, Ohio State, really? I know it's your favorite team. That's who you're gonna play.
I always start I play with them at least once. You gotta do the creative player with your favorite school. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll probably create a running back or quarterback, play through Ohio State.
If you start,
maybe it'd be Matt McCord or something like that.
If you start as Ohio State, you're a cop.
I'm not sure what if you really get that. I'll end up at, like we're already off the rails anyway. So like with this new coaching stuff, I'll probably end up at Ohio State eventually. But no, you got to start out at like, I don't know. I'll probably pick like some like MAC school as like an offensive coordinator, and then you can work your way up, take some P4 job, and then
I've been thinking
Ohio State.
I've been thinking I want to start maybe with North Texas.
Could be fun.
I don't know. That's who I'm leaning towards. I have to buy a console and a game before I can do this, by the way. But
I do too. My PS2 is not gonna work here.
They don't have like the reverse or whatever it's called, like where you.
No, do they have an adapter where I can use?
No, they don't. They don't, unfortunately.
I just learned you could download games online and stuff. Fairly recently.
Makes life fairly easy now. All my stuff is on my systems. I need both of you to get it because I will be creating content around this game, and it would be fun to have you guys play.
Oh, I think I'm getting it, but now I've committed to buying one of those neon signs that Felix has apparently. So, is that my discretionary C2C related budget for the month? That is decisions over here.
Look, I mean, like we can have this larger discussion behind the scenes here, but like I feel like if those are the two options, we'll figure out a way for maybe Campus to Canton to pay for the sign right now. You can pay that back. Let's focus on the video game right now.
Oh, Campus Canton's already paying for me to go to Boston in 3 weeks too. So not that that's a leisure trip by any stretch of the imagination, but so. Who knows? All right, back on track here. College Football 25 is coming out here sometime in the next couple of weeks, whatever. And they've released some lists of how teams are ranked in the game. Now, I know this is largely irrelevant outside of like the first season, and everybody, your goal is to play multiple seasons into this. It doesn't really matter anyway, but I think it's interesting to just see, like, this is supposed to be kind of raw talent numbers. And so I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts. Here are the top 10 just total team power rankings in the game. Tell me if these make sense. You got Georgia as the top dog. They're a 95 overall. I'm assuming out of 99 is what most of these games go to. So I'm assuming it's out of that. Ohio State and Oregon are both at 93. Alabama and Texas are at a 92 overall. Clemson, Notre Dame, LSU at 90. Penn State and Utah at 88. We didn't even put the most egregious ones on here. I believe Colorado and Stanford are both at 87, as is Kansas, I think, which felt very odd to me because they seem to be one of those teams that kind of outperforms the total sum of the actual talent they have on the roster. I don't know. So those are the team power rankings. The offenses, it's a lot of the same teams. Oregon and Georgia at 94, Alabama, Texas at 91, Ohio State, LSU, Miami, Colorado, Missouri, all at 89, and Clemson at 87. Chris, you're the power ranking betting. You've got a formula guy. What did they get wrong here on these?
I think I got a lot wrong. The top 10 is fine, I think, for the most part. Not sure I would put Utah in the top 10, but they are the favorite to win the Big 12, so I get it. I mean, this is why they do it, right? This is why they release these things. This is why they do it, to drum up engagement. But Colorado, eighth best offense. I don't know about that one. Feel like we're getting a little ahead of our skis there, especially based on what we saw last year and how they project moving into 2024, which I think is better, but not a heck of a lot better. Like, do you really think this offense is going to deserves to be eighth after they got they got dump trucked by Oregon last year? So they can't really play against quality opponents. When they do, they don't score very much. So no, I would not put them there.
From an efficiency standpoint, I saw somebody say that they were like 80th or 90th in the country last year on a per play basis. So that's
they weren't very good.
Yeah, so I mean that's a tough. I know that doesn't always equal talent. The efficiency of the unit as a whole. Interesting to me. Matt, your Ohio State Buckeyes are up there. You're probably happy.
I mean, I am. I feel, not that I take this as like the gospel. I feel a little bit justified that they have Ohio State and Oregon both at 93. I felt like I got a little bit of kickback when I said I think Oregon might actually on paper have a better team than Ohio State going in. So to see them both kind of ranked up there as the two behind Georgia, which I think that's fair. Those three. I personally have a problem with Alabama being there at 4 and at a 92 with what they lost and just kind of the way that team looks. Like, I have no problem with them being in the top 10 just because of the talent that is still on that roster and the fact that DeBoer was really able to keep most of the players. I actually don't even remember anybody really transferring out outside of a couple. Outside of a couple players, and one of them being Caleb Downs, who, in my opinion, was, I think you could argue, not only one of the best defensive players in football last year, but there was a lot of people saying was the best football player in general in college football last year. So losing a player like that and still being above a team like Texas, who they got beat by, and I think just retained so much of that talent and then went and added players, I think they should be up there. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, because I definitely have, I know Chris does too, but a Dabo bias. Clemson at 90 just seems a little overranked to me. I don't think that they're that good. I mean, I guess if you want to put them down there with Utah and Penn State, that's fine. But I felt I would personally probably have Notre Dame and LSU over them. And I think that's it, really. I mean, yeah, I didn't put Colorado on there because that's just that they're on there for Sanders, and that's it, in my opinion. The offense is, I mean, that I think Miami's too high as well. I mean, I know they brought in Cam Ward and things could be better, but was Damian Martinez too at running back, which could be interesting, but the schedule that they have, and again, just the fact that Mario Cristobal is their head coach, and we've never seen him ever open up an offense. I would be very surprised if that team offensively is really going to be that good. But maybe that's thinking too much college football and not thinking about just the weapons they have on that team for a video game. Could be actually a lot of fun. So,
well, you're considering offensive line play there too, right? And so Miami, I think is supposed to have a pretty good offensive line this year. And that's the part that feels very inconsistent to me, because Clemson's offensive line is going to be really bad, right? That's shockingly the weird thing. They haven't recruited offensive line well at all there the past couple of years. I don't really know why that is, because they were for a few years there. They put a couple of tackles into the NFL relatively early. I don't remember there being a lot of key interior guys going, but it was never a weakness of the team. But that line now is so bad, and they don't dip into the portal ever to kind of boost it. So I think, to have an offense that high, that 5 of the guys that you're rolling out there every single week probably aren't very good, is a little weird to me. And I'm sure there are some inflated values there. We don't think Chris Vizina is very good at all. The game probably likes him because he was a borderline 5-star guy. Hasn't really played there at Clemson yet. So, that probably boosts up Things like that I think probably help some of these guys. Georgia at 94 is actually really interesting to me as well, because I don't think who would be their highest rated skill guy outside of Carson, Carson back to quarterback.
Offensively, I would
love it. One of the running backs,
probably
maybe
Oscar
ETN.
Delp.
People seem to be pretty high on Lovett for some reason. We'll obviously talk about that here in a minute, but probably ETN. I think I agree with Chris there. It's probably ETN. He had a good season with Florida.
I don't know. So, I mean, the line's probably carrying that value a little bit there for them. Actually, weirdly, they're probably the inverse.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Yeah, the only team that I don't think is there that I would put there is Ole Miss for sure. I think Ole Miss probably deserves to be either in the top 10 offense or the top 10 teams. Probably both.
I think both. I mean, a lot of that I think probably goes on their defense. I think Bud Elliott talked about this in a video he did too, though, but like all the players that they brought in through the transfer portal on defense, like I personally think they deserve to be over. They're probably above a Utah. I'm still kind of iffy on Notre Dame as well, but maybe that's just because I'm so down on Riley Leonard. I don't know that offense is going to be great, but Mike Denbrock coming in might fix that. But I mean, you mentioned the offensive line. I mean, I think you could say the same thing, not even just about you mentioned Clemson. Obviously, there's all the questions about Colorado. Everybody seems to be overlooking the fact that Ohio State's offensive line is not that good either. It's probably going to be maybe as good or possibly even worse than what it was last year. And I know Will Howard can run a little bit more than Kyle McCord can, but I think
you're underselling there a little bit. I think he can run a lot better.
He can run more. Okay, fine, whatever. He can run more, or he's a better athlete than Kyle McCord. But I don't know I'm catching up from being on vacation through all of the Camps to Canton podcast. I heard you two talking about that. I think it was last week's episode, not the one that dropped today, but you and Chris. That you think that, it'll still be a hybrid of the Ryan Daly, Chip Kelly offense, which I agree with. But I still have with how bad that offensive line was at times. Like I still think that's going to cause issues for Will Howard. And yeah, it'll help him because he can run, but I think that affects the passing game. So I'm kind of surprised that Ohio State's that high up there. I think a lot of it is just because of the perceived talent on that offensive side of things. But the offensive line, I think, is going to cause issues. Again, maybe I'm thinking too college football-ish and not enough video game numbers, but like I think that could be a big issue for them.
I mean, it's like a top 10 unit in the country, though. Like, you could say it's bad, but like bad is still relative to what they are. Like I think they're a top 10 offensive line. Like they have the skill to do so. I like the transfers they brought in. Like I still think it's a good unit. It's probably not as good as it could be, but that doesn't really bother me all that much. Like I don't know how you keep Ohio State out.
I think
like top 5, for example, when you consider all everything that they have. Like I think you have to keep them in the top 5. I don't even like Will Howard, so.
Well, you know what else is wild? That LSU's overall team power ranking is 90, but their offense is 89. So does that imply that the defense is rated higher, even though we think the defense is atrocious there?
It might. I don't know, because now that you say that, I would be surprised. There's no
how
way.
How does that work? How do they weight that?
Higher? Yeah. No, it's special teams too. Don't forget special teams. They do all 3.
So maybe LSU have good. Didn't they have bad special teams last year?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think their defense is going to be good this year either, though. So I don't know.
I'm just curious. I mean, I can't really name any guys barely on their defense except for Harold Perkins.
Their defense is ranked 90th, or a 90 score. Sorry.
So higher than their offense. Interesting.
Yeah, they must have Garrett Nussmeier rated pretty lowly, and their wide receivers.
Honestly, I mean, it's a lot of unproven pieces in that offense, so I get it. But the line's good. Don't they have 2 bookend tackles that are supposed to be very, very good? I mean, I don't know. I thought that would, maybe boost them up a little bit.
Yeah, I thought they would. They probably have 2 first rounders.
Yeah,
on the offensive line.
It's got to be because of that defensive line. Then what is it, Perkins? And I know they've got somebody else in there that are probably going to be close. I know Perkins will probably be a first round pick. I'm sure they've got others. I don't remember that. That secondary was bad last year, though.
Yeah, the secondary is really big. Well, the defensive tackles in the secondary are the bigger problem than anything. But Perkins is by far the best player. I don't think that unit is anything all that special.
Yeah,
good players, but not like elite players.
Certainly talented if you just look at their recruiting score from 2, 3, 4 years ago. So maybe there's a lot more of that factored in than we are thinking of here today. All right, so there's our thoughts on that. And there are some JD Pickle had some his QB to wide receiver duos in the game that I think, was this that he wanted to play with the most? Is that the
No, so he said this is actually a college football thing. The only reason I put this is because some people kicked back on me at this, and so I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it. So he released the top QB to wide receiver duos for the 2024 season. Like, these are going to be the best, QB to wide receivers. And I thought interesting discussion as well. At least I know I do like to pair one quarterback with the wide receiver if I can on my C2C rosters, NFL stacking, as they call it. I know a lot of people like to do it. Found it very interesting. They had Quinn Ewers to Isaiah Bond as number 1. Then it was Brady Cook to Luther Burden at 2. Dylan Gabriel to Tez Johnson at 3. Noah Fafita to Tedero McMillan at 4. This is the one I had the biggest issue with. Shedeur Sanders to Travis Hunter at 5. Garrett Nussmeier to, oh my God, why am I forgetting his Tyron Lacey at 6. Nico to Squirrel White at 7. Cameron Ward to Xavier Restrepo at 8. At 9, Will Howard to Emeka Egbuka. And then at 10, Carson Beck to Dominic Lovett. And I posted a tweet saying that in my opinion, I think 6, 7, 9, and probably 10 will all be better than 5 this year. And a lot of people seem to disagree with that. I don't know if it's just the Shedeur Sanders love, but I mean, I think we've already talked a little bit about it here too. That offensive line is going to be so bad. Shedeur, at least in my opinion, some people disagree. I think most of the people here, Campus of Canton, agree. Not the greatest athlete, not going to really avoid many rushers. While I think Travis Hunter is and can be a phenomenal receiver, like, I just don't see him those two outproducing a lot of players on this list. So them at 5 just seemed like a stretch to me. If you want to put them in the top 10, sure. I think there's others that could be up there. But like, I think this, again, just people, I think it was just him trying to get clicks. Because I also don't think Dylan Gabriel to Tez Johnson deserves to be up there. Again, I know, listening to your guys' conversation about Evan Stewart and what Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson did last year. Tez a little bit slow off the block, still finished as, I think you guys said, wide receiver 25. Troy Franklin was a top 5 wide receiver, so maybe Evan Stewart's a little bit slow. But like, I think Evan Stewart's going to eat into Tez Johnson a lot more than people think. So like, I don't think that's I would have them that high. I wouldn't have Ewers to Bond at 1 either. So like, it's just an interesting list.
I don't know what the list was created to reflect exactly, which I think is part of the issue. But I mean, I'm going through quarterbacks and wide receivers just like by our rankings, and I'm like, yeah, it's not that good of a duo. Like, it's kind of tough to come up with 2-10 like really good duos, and without starting to dip into the G5, right? Like, I think Jordan McLeod and Joey Hobart deserve a mention. Byron Brown and Sean Atkins deserve a mention. But I'm not really going to push back on Shedeur and Travis Hunter just because I don't really have an issue with them being in the top 10. Maybe their rank is a little bit egregious, but kind of don't mind it. Maybe the other one that I think deserves to be there is Jackson Arnold and Deion Burks. Like, I would probably put them in the top 10. But there aren't that many great duos where both a quarterback and a wide receiver are quality players.
I don't get the Dominic Lovett stuff. I don't know.
Everybody every single year wants to make a Georgia wide receiver a thing, and just stop. Just stop. It's a tight end or bust. There's not a productive wide receiver in this offense.
I just don't understand what Dominic Lovett has done in the past. I know he had that decent year at Mizzou. I didn't think it was a transfer to Georgia quality year.
And he was playing in the slot there also, which is like the position they feed.
And quite frankly, why would I give any deference to a player that wide receiver that Georgia pulled out of the portal? They've been terrible at talent identification and like through that route at that position. Like, I don't think it's a talent development issue per se. I think they've done a very poor job of talent, like identifying talent. So why would I be like, well, he's at Georgia, he must probably be pretty good if Georgia thought he was good and went to get him more to the portal? Like, that would make sense to me if Kalen DeBoer was going after him, or Steve Sarkisian, or Lincoln Riley. But for, the guys at Georgia there, I'm like, okay, it doesn't mean anything to me.
I think they suffer from drafting or taking athletes that aren't like technical enough to play the position. And that's what they do at a lot of positions. And they think, oh, I can coach them up. Their wide receiver development is not where it is for offensive and defensive line development, or even like in the back 7. right? It's like those positions you could develop, and they have in the past, just taking big dudes and saying, all right, we can work with this. Like Amarius Mims. Like, it hasn't worked at wide receiver. You're just taking athletes. Like, Arian Smith has done nothing. He's like the fastest player in the country. Let's see something.
I was talking about this on Twitter the other day with Volume Pigs, and he's a Georgia guy, but I think he's generally pretty fair about, I wouldn't describe him as a homer personally. And we were kind of talking about this, and it's like a real chicken and the egg situation with Georgia and wide receivers right now, because he was saying, they don't have a shot at like the top kind of obvious guys in every class, so they have to go after just these six, the big athlete, 6'3", 6'4", 190 to 210, and like just hope that they can develop into something. And my argument's that I do think they have a shot at those guys if they really wanted them, first off, but B, like they haven't proven that they can develop anybody because they're going after these guys that are never going to develop. And so then they get a reputation as not being able to develop. Like I think for them, really, talent ID and development have been very, very poor over the past couple of cycles, really, there at Georgia. And I know you can point to, you can point to A.D. Mitchell, you can point to, what the heck's his name? Lad McConkey.
Oh yeah.
But I think the difference between those guys is that like you can go watch some of these guys in high school. We talk about this all the time. I did a video, actually. We did like a ton of freshman profiles a couple years ago, videos. They were like short 5 minutes videos. I don't know if you remember this. And I did one on Andre Green Jr., who went to UNC. And I was like, this guy just doesn't know how to play football at all. And I'm pretty sure it was his, like at least one of his teammates in the comments, and was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, this dude's going to go blow up college football. And I'm like, he's not exhibited any signs that he knows how to play football at all. Yeah. Like, and I think in this day and age, this is like a totally different discussion than what we started on here. I think it's impossible if you don't know how to play wide receiver at all, outside of just be big, be fast, win at the catch point. I think it's impossible to develop once you hit high school or once you hit college at this point, if you don't have some of those skills already, because of just how much development is already happening for everybody else by that point. Like if you can't, sink your hips out of breaks, if you have no feel through route stems, in terms of keeping DBs off balance, if you can't attack leverage, like these are like basic skills that it's too late for you.
No, I agree with you. And so just to give a little bit more clarity, I wanted to go find the thing. It's projecting the top quarterback wide receiver duos for the 2024 college football season. So that's what he expects to be. He expects Ewers to Bond to be the best QB to wide receiver duo for the 2024 season. And then so on and so forth down the list. So I would assume the Beck to Lovett thing is they're just trying to find a wide receiver on Georgia, and I guess they're just rolling with Lovett. I mean, I imagine they're going. I mean, realistically, if you take Brock Bowers off that roster for the past couple of years, they do a pretty good job of spreading the ball around, and they obviously don't have a Brock Bowers type there this year that I think I would rely on being the top target. So they're probably just going with the guy they think is going to be the leading receiver. I mean, is there someone else on their roster you would take over there? Would you not even have them in the top 10?
I wouldn't even have him in the top 10. I mean, who would be the other guy you would think about there? Colby Young?
Man, I don't think Colby Young's going to be that good either. I don't know. I mean, I would lean toward, just based on their history, for me, I would lean probably Ben Urosek would be my guess. But I don't know with him because he transferred in pretty late into spring, did he not? So, I mean, who knows how, caught up he is in the playbook, if he'll even be out there that much. He's definitely not Brock Bowers, but that's where I don't love this wide receiver core in general. I mean, maybe Dylan Bell. Could it be, too bad Collins not here? Could it be his guy, Michael Jackson the third? Maybe.
Wait, Michael Jackson the third transferred to Georgia?
I'm almost positive. Yeah.
What are they doing in the port? What are they doing?
I'm pretty sure he's on Georgia. I could be wrong, but yeah. So I mean, it's just I thought it was a weird combination, but I think it was them just trying. Everybody expects him to be the number one quarterback taken in the 2024 draft next year, so it's probably them trying to find a way to get him on the list.
Well, he did transfer to Georgia. I guess I didn't realize that either.
What are the odds that Travis Hunter isn't the leading receiver on Colorado this year?
I think high, but
70%.
That he's not, or that he is?
That he's not.
I kind of agree with that. Yeah,
they have a really good trio, probably 4 really good wide receivers. Especially if they're gonna have him play both sides of the ball. I'm not treating him as the wide receiver 1 there. I'll trade Dante Wester is that.
He might be wide receiver 1 in the sense that, like, if you're at a critical moment in a game and you need a big play, who are you throwing it to?
Yeah.
From that standpoint, you might be, but from production, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't know that, and this is like I've caveated every time I say, like, I don't think Colorado is a very talented team at all, except for wide receiver. I think their wide receiver room is really, really good. It's probably one of the deepest wide receiver rooms from a talent perspective in college football. Outside of like the top, handful of teams, I think you could really, Wester, Shepard, Hunter, Jimmy Horn Jr., Amarian Miller, Cordell Russell, Draylon Miller, we really, really like. It's like a talent coming out of high school. Like, that's a pretty good wide receiver room overall. And a lot of different archetypes of player there too.
Yeah, that was part of the reason, again, why I had an issue with them being this high up on the list, and why I said what I said. Like, I don't necessarily, I guess, have an issue with them being top 10, like Chris said, but I would have put in most of those duos, maybe even Ward Restrepo, which is the one below them I left off, because they could be a pretty fun duo there in Miami. I think that they're all going to outproduce Shador and Hunter. I don't think. I think that's just trying to capitalize on the Colorado name and Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter at the moment.
Which wide receiver on this list ends up with the most yards this year? And just Isaiah Bond, Luther Burton, Tez Johnson, Tet McMillan, Travis Hunter, Kyron Lacey, Squirrel White, Xavier Restrepo, Emeka Egbuka, Dominic Lovett.
It's between two for me. McMillan and Egbuka. No, McMillan and Egbuka.
So we're moving Ohio State bias. I'm going to go with Burton and Tet McMillan.
So the McMillan right now? That would be my first guess. I think, again, I listened to this show earlier, and Austin talking about I think Egbuka is going to be the guy. I've been down on Carnell Tate. I think he's been widely overrated. I think it's going to be the Egbuka show if he stays healthy. And from everything I've heard as well, despite what a lot of people have kicked back whenever I've said this, it sounds like Jeremiah Smith is going to be starting come game 1. It's going to be Tate, Smith, and Egbuka out on the field. Now, I think with him being probably in the slot more often than not, especially if Will Howard does get pressure, Egbuka is probably going to be that guy in the short intermediate parts of the field that they dump the ball off to. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he is the leading receiver for Ohio State. So that's why I'd be between those two.
Yeah,
McMillan would be my vote, though.
I think he could be the leading wide receiver for Ohio State. I don't know that the leading wide receiver is going to have more yards than. Like, I'm not even sure I'd put Emeka Egbuka in the top 5 or 6 in terms of most likely to lead the nation in receiving yards. I just think there's a lot.
Is that a target issue? Is it a explosiveness of player or offense issue?
It's not a player. It's not a player issue. How about that? I think it's everything else. The mixture of everything else. I think it's a downgraded quarterback. Probably fewer targets. The offense is probably going to be more balanced. All of those things together. He's not the most talented wide receiver in that room. It's Jeremiah Smith. No. Jeremiah Smith is a freshman. So how much does that impact Egbuka? I don't know, but enough for me not to think that he's a guy that's going to lead the country in receiving. And maybe it'll happen, but I think there's a lot better options to bet on.
So
neither of you guys mentioned who I think has like a better shot. Well, so I've been on. I think Restrepo has a solid chance to be like the wide receiver 1 for college fantasy this year, but I think that's going to be in PPR formats because I think he's going to be a target monster this year. I do think he'll have a pretty good amount of yardage. Squirrel White, I think, has a really decent chance to be the leading receiver in terms of yardage in college football. Just that role that we're in, we know that role can do it, or get pretty close to that. And he's just like a big play waiting to happen. I don't think that wide receiver room is very talented. Like, I do think he's going to see a pretty fair amount of targets too. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. The offense is definitely going to be a lot better. The only other name on this list that I had was Tez Johnson, but I think Evan Stewart's going to do enough. Although I will say him and Troy Franklin both ranked in the top 11 last year, and Troy Franklin was 6th. So we know that there is enough volume to support 2 top 10 wide receivers. Just don't know that there's enough for a singular guy to emerge.
And I actually think Dylan Gabriel, like, he'll only get 1 year in this offense, so we'll see. But I think that if like the only criteria was like which quarterback is going to just like get his receivers more easy yardage, I feel like I prefer Gabriel to Nix in that category overall.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I can't remember who mentioned this. It might have been Cover 3. I don't want to be like giving out like, free pub to the wrong person here, but I'm almost positive it was either Tom Fernelli or Bud Elliott that talked about how a lot of we already know that, what was it, Bubble Screen Bo was his nickname for how many screen passes and everything he threw. But I want to say it was Cover 3 mentioned that like over 50%, it might have been like 60% plus, were to the left side of the field. So Bo was having to go across his body. Dylan Gabriel's a left-handed quarterback. So like I think he gets those out even quicker. So if it is to Tez Johnson, I think both could be. Outside of, I know they get Ohio State, Michigan. I don't think they play Penn State. I want to say that their schedule is, do they play Penn State, Chris? No? So I want to say outside of those two, their schedule, in my opinion, is fairly easy. It's why I think they could have a chance to win the Big Ten. I think they have a chance to beat Ohio State personally with that defensive line and how bad I think Ohio State's offensive line is. I would not be surprised if it's not close to a repeat of what we saw a couple of years ago in Columbus. So I think Dylan Gabriel's going to have plenty of chances to throw the ball. So yeah, I mean, I think he could easily outproduce Bo Nix numbers, which would be insane considering what because he broke, was it college passing records last year? Was it Oregon's? I can't remember. I know he broke some records toward the end of his season last year with Oregon, but I can't remember if that was college football related or if it was actually Oregon Duck related.
What in terms of what, like completion percentage or efficiency?
I know one of them was completion percentage, but I could have swore something with passing yards and touchdowns as well. He broke toward the end of last season. I remember the completion percentage one because they like pulled him out after he went back over because he went under after like a bad pass and then he went back over and they yanked him out.
In that Liberty game, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix threw for 4,500 yards and 45 touchdowns. Not quite sure we can project the same to Gabriel, even though I do think it's not a poor one-for-one replacement.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some supplemental drafts. Chris, you and I are actually already talked supplemental drafts this week on Campus Life. I had a good time doing that, but we're going to talk about here again on this show. This is really draft season if you're into any sort of college fantasy format. And I think it's because we're starting to feel good about the information that we have. Depth charts are solidifying. The portal's been closed for the most part. You're not really going to get a lot of new weird news. So this is when a lot of the drafts start going on. I think I'm in 4 right now. I know, Chris, you said you've done a bunch. Matt, we're in at least 2 or 3 of them together. So I know you're right in the heart of it here as well. Players that you guys just find yourselves taking a lot of for whatever reason, they're good values. You just like the player, et cetera, et cetera. Who do you guys just find yourselves ending up with a lot of right now?
The Rice offense. Like EJ Warner's probably already rostered in your leagues, but tight end Bowden Groen probably isn't. I would be really surprised if he was. He came on at the end of last season, and Dean Connors is available in a good chunk of drafts, and he goes pretty highly. And sometimes I miss out on him, sometimes I get him. But 2 players that I'm very aggressive with. I just think the Rice offense could be really good this year compared to what they've been in the past. And not that they've been bad with JT Daniels, it's just Ben Daniels and Luke McCaffrey, and that was really it. I think Dean Connors could take a bigger role. I think Bowden Groen came on at the end of last season when he was the full-time starter. I think that there's just pieces of this offense that I like. Goals, who's in the slot, could take some of that McCaffrey work. So, it's just unit that I'm aggressively targeting. Other player that I think it's an arbitrage on Joey Hobart, who, if he's not rostered, goes extremely highly, like second round-ish, is Cole Wilson, the wide receiver 2 there. I'm not totally sure that they're going to be that far off in terms of receiving yardage in this year. And I think you're getting a really deep value on Texas State wide receiver Cole Wilson. I've taken him in almost every draft.
I like Dean Connors. I've ended up with Dean Connors in a lot of.
How
Matt-
do you know who Dean Connors is? That isn't fair. You and Felix are both talking about him.
I want to ask
I'll be honest.
you,
I only know because of you guys. I have him rostered in a lot of places.
Matt. I want to
Yeah.
ask you about Dean Connors because we're in a
Yeah.
supplemental draft. We're in the same division of the program, which if anybody doesn't know is basically built as this league to mirror the NCAA football game. Like we recruit all year round, so that once the supplemental draft gets here, like all the freshmen essentially are out of the pool, outside of maybe a couple that fell through the cracks or whatever. You took Dean Connors at like the 106 in that draft, and you left some really interesting players on the board, including Abu Sama, who actually fell to like the 110 or 111 or something like that.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Who are the players that I let fall beside? I don't think Abu Sama
Drones.
was that good.
I would have taken Drones over Connor in a
I
heartbeat
probably should
too.
have taken Drones.
I tried. So once the 102 came around to that draft, I was picking 112 because I won last year. No NBD.
Yeah.
I aggressively tried to trade up with everybody from 102 to 108, and nobody would trade, and nobody
you
would take
didn't.
Drones. And I was like,
I don't remember you reaching out to me at 106. I probably would have traded.
Yeah. So I was very upset that whole day that you guys did that to me. Yeah. Let me pull up that board, or do you have it in front of you?
No, I was trying to pull it up real quick. So I do. Yeah. So yeah, I took him at 106. Elike Mayor went at 107. Drones went at 18. CJ Daniels at 19. Quentin Cooley at 110. Abu Sama at 11, and then you took Xavier Strepo at 112.
Yeah.
Man, y'all let a lot of value fall in that draft.
I don't know. I mean, I need running backs. So here's the problem. And while this is probably not a good thing to do, because I probably should have taken Drones. Like, if you look at my roster, I roster already like 17 quarterbacks because you mentioned with the way that the program is set up, my offense is set up as air raid, and with the states that I'm in, and because of the quarterbacks I've had the past couple of years, I've had like those bonuses. So I end up getting a lot of QB recruits fairly easily. So like I just pivoted to other positions. Like I probably should have taken Drones. Like to be honest with you, the only other player I was actually considering there was Restrepo. It was between him and Connors, and I was like, I just want a running back because my running backs were horrible. I'm pretty sure I had to start Cam Cook one week last year, where he got like one whopping carry. So like I needed running backs, and so I went ahead and just grabbed the guy that was at the top of my board.
So
I was sitting there, and I forget who I was messaging with, and I was like, "Oh, Matt's gonna take the guy I want here," and you didn't. And I was like, "What the heck, Dean Connors?"
He goes in the top 4 rounds of most drafts now. So like you either have to pay up or you're
Wait, Connors does?
Yeah, I mean, I've taken him. In the
Matt's
top 4,
taking him in the 4th round too.
Oh, supplementals. I thought you meant CFF drafts. I was like, no freaking way.
He
goes
top 7 or 8 rounds though.
That feels wild to me.
I don't know. People are really excited about his projection, both rushing and the passing game. Like you have to buy into that to get him though. Like you're not getting him at a discount pretty much anywhere.
Man, I mean, I don't dislike the guy. I don't know. That feels a little rich to me, but
just take Bowden Grow and you'll have the most productive piece of this offense.
There we go. Matt, you like your running backs that you're taking this year?
I don't like them, but I just keep ending up with them. And so like James Peoples and Kewan Lacey, I was trying to pull up the last one that I got him. I mean, I got Peoples in the 3rd round and Lacey in the 4th. Like, I just feel like that's great value for 2 running backs that I think for the most part have fairly solidified value. That, at least in my opinion, definitely Peoples more than Lacey. I mean, with them losing, life of me cannot remember his name at the moment, but they lost their running back coach. No, their running back.
Tony Alford.
Yeah, Tony Alford. No, wait. No, it wasn't Tony Alford that left. Was it? Now I'm misremembering.
I'm pretty sure he went to Michigan, right?
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Well, they've lost like 6, not really 6 coaches. They've lost multiple coaches to Michigan over like the past couple months. So with them losing Tony Alford, I don't know that they haven't, at least in my opinion, outside of Travion Henderson, done a great job of recruiting running backs, or at least those high-end guys. Like, I don't think Peoples is going to get recruited over. I was going to actually mention this earlier, but since we're talking about Peoples now, Austin, you brought this up. A lot of people have a misconception about the Ohio State offense that they are extremely pass-heavy. They're not. Ryan Day actually has run the ball a ton over the past couple years outside of 2021, where they were passing the ball almost 60% of the time. It's been closer to 50, almost even up to 60% of the time rushing the ball in neutral situations. Like, they run the ball a ton. I would be very shocked if Henderson or Quinshon's back next year. I think they're both going to the NFL draft. As you mentioned, they lose Dallin Hayden to Colorado. So it's going to be the people's show next year. And I think he's going to be a very good running back for Ohio State, especially if Chip Kelly stays on as the offensive coordinator with how much they run the ball. And then the same thing with Keywan Lacey. I mean, we've seen these running backs in the Eli Drinkowitz offense just are absolute studs. I know I've kind of been on a hill by myself here, and that I think he's better than both Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll, and that we will see him at some point in time in the Missouri offense this year. But even not, I think it's fair to say he's likely the guy next year with how explosive he is. Like, yes, he may not be the most nuanced rusher. He may not have like the best vision, hit the right holes at times, but when he does get in the open field, I mean, he's gone. He's a very, very explosive runner. I think that he could be really good for that Missouri offense. So to get them, especially like I said, most of the time it's like third, fourth, fifth round, I think is just steals. And that's why I've been taking them. I don't want to. I mean, just the one that I was looking at just a minute ago, the nerds draft that we're both in. Also, like I ended up I've gotten like 3 running backs in the first 6. I don't want that many running backs, to be honest with you, but they just keep falling. So I'm going to take them at the value there.
I like Peoples, but and I'll just push back. Those are 2 of the running backs that I think are most likely to be replaced by a transfer in 2025.
So here's why I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I think Ohio State is going to take, like, I think they're going to recognize, like, there's going to be years where they push all in, and then other years where they realize that there's no need for that from like a monetary perspective. And running back is just such like a luxury position. Like you can probably just get by with like pretty much anybody. I don't know that I actually think that they really would find someone that's like obviously day one slotting in above him. And just like, there's no question about it.
I would have agreed if they did not bring in Quinshon Judkins this year. That was such an obvious luxury asset.
Well, it's an all-in move though. Like this
exactly
year
why.
is like it's they went out and got Caleb Odom, they went out and got him, they got a couple linemen out of the portal. Like they went and got Will Howard.
I just refuse to believe that won't be what Ohio State does every year. Like we just saw Oklahoma add what's his name on the defensive line, and they're like a 7-win team, and they spent a ton of money to get this dude. So like, I just don't think that that's acceptable answer to a lot of programs. I don't know.
Spending money on one guy, I think, is different than they went out and spent significant money on like 10 guys. Like I just, and I think like after this year, just the natural flow of that program, I think they can still make the playoff with no Will Howard, whoever they have a quarterback next year. But I wouldn't necessarily expect a first-year starter to be leading us to a national championship his first year. Like, I think that's wild for any coach to think that. I think even if they're telling the team like we can push, like I think in the back of most coaches' mind, they're like, if a good showing this year is 10 to 11 wins, we make the playoff, maybe we win a game, and then we kind of set up for that next year. Like I don't know.
2025 Ohio State starting quarterback Quinn Ewers.
The only would love to have him back. The only reason I agree with Austin here is, and we've talked about it for the past couple of years, since NIL has kind of become a bigger thing, Ohio State has not had like a great NIL program. And the only reason they've gone all in this year, it's been widely reported, as when they lost to Michigan for the 3rd time in a row. And then I believe it was actually when, literally, if I remember correctly, 5 minutes after Michigan won the national championship, they announced Quinshon coming to Ohio State. And on top of that, there was like a mass blast email to all Ohio State alumni that we need to increase our NIL efforts so that this and that. They are going all in this year because Ryan Day will be fired if he loses again. The 12-team playoff, I think, is going to negate some of that. I think that they will go all in on certain positions. I don't think it will be running back. So, and I actually don't think, I think the same thing with Missouri. I don't think that they will bring in a recruit over Keywan Lacey either, personally. I do think that Ohio State will go to the transfer portal to get another running back, because right now it's one. I know they're bringing in somebody right now in the 25 class, but I don't think he's highly rated. So maybe they'll go to the transfer portal.
That's Bo Jackson?
Yeah. No, I don't think, did he commit or did he visit? I know he visited recently. I don't remember if he committed.
I know they backed off Jordan Davison because he got enormous. Like literally like gained like 40
I think
pounds,
Bo Jackson did commit, if I'm remembering correctly. So, but I think they might go to the portal to bring somebody else in, but I don't think they're going to land like a Quinshon again. Like they did that because of what happened. It's 3 years in a row they've been quote unquote out physicaled by Michigan, and that they had that tough running game. They wanted to be tougher, and that's why they went out and got a guy like Judkins. I don't think they do that every single year.
I guess we'll see.
It is Bo Jackson, by the way, that they have next year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, looking like a good class overall. Shocker. I just have I talked a little bit about on campus life this week. I think as Chris was kind of talking about with Cole Wilson, I think the second wide receiver in some of these power offenses is like such a value right now. The big one for me is Demir Blankumsey. I think I've taken him in every draft I've done so far, or pretty close to it. Just because he last year Memphis, they had their leading receiver was Rock Taylor. He had 102 targets, but Blankumsey was right behind him with 83. He actually had more touchdowns. Like the yardage was about 150 yards apart. Like they are pretty close overall, and he goes significantly later than Rock Taylor does. So I like Demir Blankumsey a lot. Same with Cole Wilson. Same with Rashad Owens. Seems to go a lot later than Brennan Presley, and I'm fine taking Owens later. I've taken a lot of those guys. Even like the Washington State wide receivers, I'll kind of take whichever guy's still on the board. South Alabama wide receivers, I'll take whichever is second off the board of those guys. Like I think just that second wide receiver is really attractive to me this offseason because for some reason they are falling so much further than the top guy. I'm also, as my last pick in the draft, taking Mullings from Michigan, like a ton. Just like if he does end up being the guy there, like I don't think he's really any good, like overall, like from a talent perspective. But if he's the guy there, he probably runs for over 1,000 yards. That's free money. And then I've taken Nick Vattiato in like 60% of my draft so far. He's good. That offense is interesting. We were talking about this a while ago in the CFF chat, and it's kind of stuck in the back of my mind. He's listed as a junior. He has more eligibility. I think it was Ethan Sowers that said like he could see him going up a little bit as a senior. And I would be lying if I said that I've watched enough Middle Tennessee to have like a strong opinion on how good of a player Nick Vattiato is. But I mean, maybe if he has another really good year, could he move up a little bit? I don't know. I mean, I'm not like this guy's not a first round NFL draft pick. He's not going to go day 2 ever or anything like that. But like, I don't know. He's interesting to think about there.
Yeah, check out the G5 Hive with Justice and Luke. They just recently interviewed him as well.
Yeah, should have mentioned that. Yeah,
seems like a good kid.
Good head on his shoulders.
Good head on shoulders. First in, last out.
Great guy. And that Felix's favorite.
Even better person.
Even better person. That's it. Even better person.
All right, some riser fallers here for this year. And Matt, you said that we were discussing Jalen Milroe in our Devi chat, like at the campus Black the other day. And I feel like I am getting labeled as a Jalen Milroe truther. I am not. I actually don't really even have him that high in my rankings. But I think any discussion about Jalen Milroe comes into like, well, like he hasn't really developed over the past couple of years. Like Kalen DeBoer, like I don't know that he fits that offense. And it's just like people forget how atrocious Michael Penix Jr. was when he was not with Kalen DeBoer. Like DeBoer will take whatever quarterback he has and make their life 10 times easier and will kind of morph his system to him. So I've been labeled as a Jalen Milroe truther in the chat, even though I am explicitly not a Jalen Milroe truther. Who do you guys think though? Like who are you guys truthers of this year? Who's a guy that just like you, like the whatever narrative around them, like you just don't think that the drum beat is strong enough for some of these guys, Chris? No, and Matt, you're not allowed to give that answer you have on the sheet, by the way.
What? Why?
That'll be 4 straight episodes in a row you've talked about Cam Cook. No,
I don't have
I'm putting my foot down.
I was actually looking through my rankings to try and find somebody else. Because for just like quick behind the scenes, I'm pretty sure I put Cam Cook for every one of my answers throughout the whole show sheet, just so I can have them on there.
My answers were fun. You like inserted answers for me that were all very, very funny.
I put who knows and then this and that. Then I put some G5 guy for Chris on a bunch of his different stuff. So.
Okay, Chris, sorry.
No, yeah, I had Jordan James. We have him currently as RB19 in our overall Campus Canton ranks. I just think he could have a really big year at Oregon. Like a really big year at Oregon. Like 1,400, 1,500 yards. Ton of touchdowns. I wish he was a little bit bigger, to be honest. I think his athleticism is good enough for the position. I think he runs hard. He was incredibly efficient last season. Yeah, he's just a guy that I find myself drafting a lot of. And knowing that I feel confident from the CFF side, but also from just like projecting him. I think he's a better player than Bucky Irving was last year. So I don't know. I kind of like his profile. We do not have great athletic testing on him with our athletic tool, but he's a better athlete than that.
It's bad. It's like sub 30th percentile. I thought he'd be closer to like 45th percentile.
We have a really old 40 time, and I've been trying to get a verified 40 time, but I have seen that he runs in the 4.4s.
There's no effing way
according
that he runs
to
in the
him.
4.4. According to myself, I also run in the 4.4s. According to me, put me in the tool, guys. Come on.
So I think he's a good enough. I think he's an above average athlete. I don't think he's that bad.
Interesting. I think he's slightly below average. Slightly below.
Okay, we're talking like 55th to 45th percentile there.
Yeah, probably in that window. Yeah.
But I don't know. I wish he was a little bit bigger with that athleticism. Is the only thing complaint.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I do not believe he's only 205.
You think he's bigger than that?
Yes.
I do too.
And Oregon doesn't
I
list
think
weights on their
210.
website. So
yeah, I think he's at least 210, possibly closer to 215.
I think he's 215.
Which that would be great. Because I think I think the athleticism he shows at his size is good enough. But he's only listed at 205. Looks bigger, I agree, but like I can't actually say that he's bigger because there's no verified weight.
Do you want me to DM him and ask him how much he actually weighs?
Yeah.
I'll do that after the show. If his DMs are open, I'll DM him. Like, hey Jordan, how much do you weigh? Asking for a friend.
I'm sure he'll answer.
Never know. Do we know anybody at Oregon? I did talk to Jerry and Dickey last year. Maybe I can message Jerry and Dickey and ask him how much Jordan James weighs.
I still talk to Austin every once.
There you go. Ask how much Jordan weighs.
Hey Austin, can you just like walk by when Jordan's on the scale and just give me an idea of how much that scale is right now.
Perfect. Yeah, use some inside context. I don't know. I just think he's good enough of an athlete, and he's an efficient runner. I think he runs hard. Just RB19 is a little low for him.
Matt, your non-Cam Cook answer? I swear to God, you're out of here if you say Cam Cook.
No, I wouldn't looked up somebody else. I'm gonna go with another one of my guys who's much lower than and I'm sure I'm gonna get some kickback on this, but it is what it is. Sam Levitt, quarterback, Arizona State. No, I think he is a guy who could really rise up this year. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Arizona State offensive line bad, doesn't have a lot of weapons around him, and I'm pretty sure they play I wouldn't say it's a brutal schedule. I don't know that anybody in the Big 12 outside of Utah. I think Arizona is going to be fairly good this year, but outside of those two, I think obviously losing Texas and Oklahoma helps them out a little bit. Speaking of Big 12, I wanted to bring up, I actually think Baron Morton and possibly Micah Hudson should have been on that list. Could have been a very sneaky quarterback to wide receiver duo from the discussion earlier in the show. But anyways,
I don't think Baron Morton's healthy at all.
It probably isn't, but
his shoulder might be like Swiss cheese.
That's all right. So what is it going to be? Jake Strong or who's it? Will Hammond?
It's Will Hammond season, baby. I just took Will Hammond in the 6th round of a supplemental draft. By the way,
very nice.
Because he keeps going right before me, and I'm just getting pissed off about it, so I went for it.
But anyways, I mean, you go look at what Kenny Dillingham did. Obviously, with Bo Nix, a little bit of an outlier at Oregon. Just with what Oregon was able to do, obviously was replicated fairly well as well last year with Will Stein. But even if you go back to his time together at Auburn, he was fairly good in pass EPA per play, total offensive pass EPA, pass explosiveness. And again, some of that is definitely going to be limited with what Arizona State could be as a possibly bad team this year. But I just think Sam Levitt is a very talented quarterback. He has I would not call him a rushing quarterback. Like I wouldn't even put him probably on the scale of like a Will Howard who we were talking about earlier, but like he can run enough to avoid defenses. He can burn you at times. I think he's got a very good arm. If I'm remembering correctly, the first year that we did the velo, he was one of the top guys in the class. I know he was top 5. I don't think he was top 3, but I want to say he was 4 or 5 when Matt and David first kind of went through and started doing those velo ratings, like very strong arm. And again, I think Kenny Dillingham is one of those guys who's kind of underrated with what he does with quarterbacks and the offense. I don't expect him to go out there and be like some CFF stud this year, but I would not be surprised if he really jumps up. I think possibly even into like the QB2 rankings next year. Right now, consensus we have him as QB 55 58.3 on the website. I think he deserves to be ranked higher than that. I think he could have a really big year and jump up. I think they overall will surprise some people this year.
That I feel bad for Arizona State and Dillingham because that is a legit total rebuild of an entire program.
It is, yeah.
Given what Herm Edwards left, like it was really, really bad. And I'm not sure it's gonna be better this year, to be honest. But it speaks a lot to Sam Levitt how he went in there and he won that job and forced Rashada out. Like I thought that was pretty impressive. And like all throughout spring, it was he won this job. He won this job. So I was not surprised when we saw him leave. I kind of like that call. I think it could be pretty good.
And I mean, that's with a guy that was not recruited by Dillingham either. So, I mean, he just flat out just up and goes across. At least if I remember correctly, I don't remember him at all being recruited by Oregon and Dillingham before he ended up choosing Michigan State and going with, I forgot his name, but the old Michigan State head coach, because he does not like Jonathan Smith at all.
Yeah, I do remember that. Because Oregon was on Dante Moore, right?
Yeah, they were on Dante Moore, but like they never even reached out to him. Like they didn't even go, and he played right there in Portland, Oregon. It was like a D2 school. It won the top high school division in Oregon, but took them to won a state championship.
That's got to be concerning though, right? Like if you don't get recruited out of your own backyard.
Not always necessarily, because Drake May wasn't really pushed hard by Bama either until it was like late in the cycle. Like I think a lot of these big schools, like
Drake
they get
May
their
was the guy before they got Bryce Young though. Like he was their next guy, and then Bryce Young fell in their laps. I don't know if that's the same.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what I'll say is it's so almost in that essence, though, Dante Moore was Oregon's guy up until what, like, was it like 4 days before signing day that he flipped to UCLA? And at that point, Levitt, I believe, had already committed to Michigan State. And he was very much like a Aiden Childs and like, no, these are the guys that went after me. I'm not flipping. And so not that they went after him. They went and got obviously Austin Novosad out of Baylor, Texas. So, I mean, it's I don't know, because he also, like I said, wasn't playing in the top division. He kind of rose out of nowhere. I still don't even think he was rated that high. He was, I think, just a 3-star for most of the services. We liked him at Campus of Canton, but like I don't think the services were very high on Levitt regardless.
Yeah, I think the timelines for quarterback recruiting is really, really important. Like, because you don't typically bring 2 in a class. So like you kind of find like your guy, you build a relationship, and then you kind of go from there. It's tough. It doesn't always necessarily worry me that much if a quarterback isn't getting those offers. Now it does worry me. Like Vizina was a guy that worried me because like none of the schools around him wanted him, and then like USC didn't offer it. Like none of like the quarterback, Ohio State didn't offer him. Like none of the quarterback schools offered him. So it's like that's a bit of a red flag right there. I think that none of those people want him, but
that's a perfect example. What I was to say, what would worry me is if you're a guy who's like in the quote unquote elite 11 circuits and at these camps, and then your home state's not offering you. That's when I get worried, because you're ever like Sam Levitt, those guys, they weren't on those things. So like I could see Oregon not really looking at it. But if you're going like Vizina, I think was doing all the camp stuff, almost positive he's at elite 11, and everybody was still passing on him but Clemson. That's when I'm like with Austin. I'm like, yeah, there's something going on here.
Yeah, if you're from Texas, none of the Texas schools want you. If you're from California, none of the California schools want you. Like that's a little concerning.
That's what Matt said is actually a really good point. And I just threw out the question. Wasn't sure if I believed it or not. But if you're like a 3 or 4-star quarterback, and you're not getting recruited by a powerhouse school in your own state, like that's probably not a red flag. That's hey, we're probably targeting someone better, and we have been for a long time. Like a lot of these relationships get formed when these kids are in like 8th grade going to the freshman year of school. They already knew who Dante Moore was. Dante Moore was a starting quarterback his freshman year, and taking his team. Did they go to the championship his freshman year?
Yeah, I think they went all 4 years.
All 4 years, yeah.
So Oregon already had a very long-term established relationship with him, and they probably kept tabs on Sam Levitt, but not to the point where like he was good enough probably to be their starting quarterback long-term. And I still probably think that's true.
I mean, a lot of these schools do. I mean, I feel like I can say this now without getting myself in trouble. I mean, Michigan had a handshake deal with Kyle McCord as an 8th grader because he was at a Michigan camp. Like you're not wrong. A lot of these quarterbacks are recruited heavily in middle school, and a lot of them have some idea of where they're going before they even step foot on field in high school.
Well, it makes sense too, because I
really
just feel
interesting.
quarterback is so different because like I feel like the timelines are very different too. Where like you're not bringing in really usually more than one in a class. Like you're kind of weighing like that. How long do I have to sit at this school? What's in front of me? And then they're important because I think really like if you're a recruiter, if you're a school, you want to get that quarterback locked in early so that then you can kind of recruit around him with guys. You know, you can say, you know, you can have, you know, Tavian St. Clair texting texting Jamie French, texting DeCarrion Moore, saying like, hey, you know, come to Ohio State next year with me. Like I'm going to be there 3 years. You know, we'll grow together. We'll develop together. We'll win a national championship. Like I think that really does. Getting the quarterback locked in early matters a lot. I think for a lot of these schools,
they become one of your best recruiters.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Like, and they have a lot more flexibility to be a recruiter, right? Because they're not an official role. So like what they can and can't do is a lot different. So when you have a guy that's so, I think that's what Walker White did at Auburn.
I was about to say it. Walker White talked about it when we brought him on signing day with some of the, you know, with Perry Thompson and Cam Coleman, and he was talking to Ryan Williams and some of those other guys too. Yeah.
It's really important. So it makes sense if you got a kid that you like 4 years ahead of time, working the network around him.
I don't really have a good explanation for my name, by the way. But I think Micah Gilbert, the wide receiver at Notre Dame, they're just so bereft of talent there that he could be their wide receiver 1 or, you know, 2 maybe. Wouldn't shock me at all. Top 40-ish guy at wide receiver. I think the athleticism is a little concerning. If he's a guy where if I have him and he hits this year, I'd probably sell him. But he looked good in the spring, apparently. I think he caught a touchdown in the spring game, too, if I recall. Right. Like a kind of a deeper ball down the right sideline is what I'm remembering in my head. So could be a guy.
What's with Notre Dame recruiting these subpar athletes at wide receivers? Like
they have a wide receiver coming in next year. I forget, Derek Meadows. Is that his name?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
I believe he's 6'5" or 6'6". He's enormous. He plays at Bishop Gorman, so like a school that like is going to throw the ball, and had 13 catches last year, and he was healthy for the whole year.
Oh, is that the kid who's like a freaky athlete? But
he's not that freaky though. Like you watch him play, and you're like his highlight tape is like 2 minutes. You're like, why is it so short? You're like, oh, because those were all of his catches for the year.
Oh my God, he's got 80-inch wingspan.
He's like a borderline 5-star guy. The most perplexing recruiting ranking I can remember since maybe Julian Fleming being really, really high.
Yeah, that I think was a lot of due to COVID, though. It feels like a lot of those rankings have been pretty.
Fleming was pre-COVID.
Was he?
That was the year before, right? 2019.
I think it was the 2019 class. It was either 18 or Julian Fleming. I'm looking it up now. 24/7. It was
his 4th year. This would be his 4th year, 2024. So he would have been in the 2020 class, would he not have?
He was in the recruiting profile class of, because now it has all his transfer stuff. He was class of.
It was 2019 or 2020.
He was class of 2020. Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. So it was the COVID class.
I was about to say, because it was Kyle McCord. Because that whole class was everybody. A lot of those quarterbacks have not been that good.
Isn't the 21 class the one that actually got impacted though? Because 20 class, you would have already basically committed. Signing day was like January.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could be wrong on this, but I could have swore Bud's talked a lot about so I know a lot of that stuff with 2020 though. They also got impacted because like there was no real Elite 11 there. Like they did
well, some of them would have already been on campus. Right?
Yeah,
that's what I think it was like the 21 class because the 20 year would have been like their senior year.
And that's
they played football in the fall of 2019.
Yeah, but it depends on where you were. Some places were already shutting down in 2020. And that's where, like, I don't think it affected
but the 2020
overall, but I get
class comes in 2020. So you played your senior year in 2019. Yeah. Like that, and then you signed in 2020.
Unless you had like spring football or something, you were largely unaffected by the pandemic. I mean, states weren't really shutting down until mid-March.
Yeah, so like Fleming, it was that next class that got it pretty bad because that was like the Malik Murphy crew and those guys that didn't really get evaluated that well. A.D. Mitchell, some of those guys. Yeah. He had 100 rating from 24/7 Sports. Julian Fleming. I'm looking at this right now.
His comp?
That at the time was
Julio Jones.
Julio Jones, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the speed.
What a look back.
The speed.
Yeah, that was never good.
What was another one saying about that? Marvin Harrison down in like the
20. He was like 23rd or something.
I think he got bumped up
receivers.
toward the end. I want to say he
Yeah,
ended
he
up in the
did.
teens, but yeah, he was pretty low for a
I
while
would
there.
I would like to defend that to an extent where like he did not look like a good athlete in high school, and then he got on campus and was like, all right, this dude's a freak athlete. Like, what happened there? Maybe it was being in the weight room, or maybe it was just not having that opportunity. But his recruiting profile was
Probably
not
the
the player that played at Ohio State.
I
Probably the
agree.
competition more than anything else, to be honest with you. They
I
only
thought-
really played decent competition their junior year, I think, when they actually traveled and played like IMG and a couple schools in Florida. Outside of that, doesn't Colin live fairly close to there and always says that like their competition is pretty poor?
So he doesn't. They were near Philly.
Or is that near
like there? He was
Fleming?
near Julian Fleming. Yeah. But the thing of that the school that Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison Jr. went to, like PA has pretty good high school football, but there aren't a lot of like those like powerhouse programs there. So that school, when they go through PA, just basically runs roughshod through the state, like because there just aren't like a lot of like Catholic like academy schools that like a bunch of talent converges at. So when they're in PA, they kill everybody. They won a bunch of state championships in a row.
They travel for
Yeah.
pretty much all their football.
Yeah. Because once they get in the state playoffs, they just blow everybody out.
St. Francis.
It's some sort of Catholic school. I forget exactly what it might be. St. Francis Academy or Saint something Academy.
That is not St. Francis, but it is Saint something. It's a weird. I can't.
Yeah, they're near Philly.
How many of the Saints can you name? Question.
Alvin Kamara,
St. Joseph's Preparatory School. That's what.
Oh yeah, St. Joe. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Save second year breakouts to next week. We already made an hour here. There's a lot of off-topic discussion with no Felix here, so
Although I will say, it feels like Felix is in the room with us now.
It does. It's like he's always here.
I feel Felix in this room tonight. He's always monitoring us. He's like, it goes off the rails real quick if I'm not around. He's told me that before in confidence. So
I think the first half hour of the show was some of the best content we've produced.
I agree. All right. Well, that will do it then for tonight, this week's episode, guys. Make sure you're heading over to Campus to Canton. Check out the new draft assistant tool that we have over there, running a sale through the rest of the week, 15% off a yearly NIL subscription over there. Get you all of our tools, all of our guides and everything over there. So you're not just, spending up for this tool, but I guarantee the tool itself is worth the money. No longer you have to set a queue. You have to, shift through 134 rosters to kind of find your guys on there. Our tool does all that for you. It can show you top guys by ADP, by rank, shows you the difference between those, lets you save your teams on there so you can go through and see how much you have a guy rostered, stuff like that. Just a really cool tool. And as far as I'm aware, we're going to continue to try to build onto it. So go check that out over at Camps to Canton. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here. Felix wants us at 4,000 so bad. He calls me twice a week, just very upset we're not there yet. And then head over to Home Field Apparel, guys. Promo code Campus to Canton, 15% off your purchase over there. I'm rocking my home field today. Nobody else got the memo apparently, but I've got my banana slugs, my UC Santa Cruz.
I'm waiting for my package to be delivered this week.
I still haven't gotten my Pepperdine one. I'm about to call in and be very upset about.
I'm all caught up. I'm excited.
Yeah, I don't remember. I got my Gooey Ducks. Yeah, I've got all these fun ones. So I don't. Is this week the Ospreys?
Oh, I hope so.
I think it's the Ospreys. I think it's what I saw. No idea what school that is. Just gonna be really, really fun. But head on over to Home Field, buy some stuff. We'll be back next week, guys. Until then, from Matt, from Chris, from Austin, from Felix, good night and good luck.